Hi and welcome. If you're new here, my name is Zoe, and today I just wanted to talk about pocket notebooks, how I've used them in the past, how I'm using them currently, why I love using them, all that good stuff. I first started using a pocket notebook when I was in college, and that was this notebook here, so I will go ahead and just start with this one. So this pocket notebook is the hardcover Moleskine, and I primarily use this from about 2017 to 2020, give or take, and this was my everyday carry when I was in college. I would just throw it in my backpack and take it with me anywhere and everywhere. And so I actually first started using a pocket notebook because one of my professors recommended it. For some context, I went to film school, so a lot of the things you'll see in here are like creative exercises and story ideas. So you can see that right away on this first page. I just jotted down some story ideas that I had to get them out of my head. A lot of blank pages in here as well, pages that I ripped out because I guess I needed them for something. But that's the joy of a pocket notebook, is if you need a scrap piece of paper, you always have one, you can just rip it out. And this is an example of, I had an assignment where I basically just needed to write down my observations for a class. And I think I had to do the same assignment for another class. Yeah, so this is the same exact thing where I'm just writing down observations, but just based on sound, because it was a sound design class that I was taking. And at the top here, I can see that I took these notes at ground zero at night. And even though I didn't date this page, I'm like pretty sure that this was on 9/11 because I did go to college in New York City. So my roommates and I went down to ground zero for 9/11. And I thought it would be honestly just a little bit more respectful to take down my observation notes in a notebook rather than jotting them down in my phone. That might just be me, but I felt a little more comfortable being able to take my class notes down in a notebook. This is an example of, I had taken this notebook on a student film set and was just taking down notes for the director of which takes were good, which takes were bad, to be able to help in the editing room so that they didn't have to go through all the footage. If they knew, for example, like take 2 was bad, they already know that they don't have to watch through that take. And another way that I really loved to use these pocket notebooks in college was just writing out a timeline, because if you've ever tried to use Google Calendar on your phone, it's honestly a little bit more trouble than it's worth if you're trying to time block out. So it was honestly just faster and more convenient for me to write out my schedule for the day and be able to see when I would have time for everything. I would also use this notebook to write down like pro and cons lists. So here I'm comparing different Switch bundles when the original Switch 1 was coming out, which is so funny because I just bought a Switch 2 like a month ago. It's crazy. Time flies. But I listed down all the different prices here and what the different bundles included just to make the most informed decision that I could. Here I was testing out a marker. Looks like I took a bite out of this page. I don't know what's going on there. Just writing down some physical props that I wanted for an assignment. A lot of to-do lists. I'm just going to skip past all the to-do lists because it's nothing too interesting, just what I had to get done in a day. I would also write down notes for a script that I was writing for a class. I was writing a murder mystery, and I hadn't decided who the killer was going to be when I first came up with the idea. So there's a lot of notes in this book about that script just because I was trying to figure it out. Lots of to-dos. Lots of notes about different storyboards that I had to draw or scripts that I was writing. Here I wrote out all of the different books that were required for a class because I prided myself on never actually buying a textbook the entire time I was in college, partially because I did go to film school, so textbooks weren't really the norm, but also I just went to the library for every single book I needed. This page, I remember, this is some questions I wanted to ask one of my professors during office hours, and again, an example of a moment where I felt it was a little bit more appropriate to pull out a notebook rather than my phone, which I guess he would understand if I was asking questions off of my phone, but I just felt a little more comfortable pulling out a notebook in that instance. Oh, and here I ended up completing a study abroad semester in the Czech Republic. And so I had to take an orientation course on like Intro to Czech. And because Czech uses all of these accents on the letters, it was again way easier to be able to write it out in my notebook than try and copy it down on my phone. And also I would like to think that writing these down helped me remember them more, because I still remember that nerozumím means I don't understand. There was one point where a Czech man came up to me and a group of friends and was trying to tell us something, and we had no idea what he was saying. So I was like, nerozumím česky, which means I don't understand Czech. And he was like, okay. And then he walked away, and I was so proud of myself for being able to remember that. And this is supposed to represent the cycle of a day. So den is day and noc is night. And again, it's just way easier to be able to draw this out on a sheet of paper than it would be to try and convey this in Google Docs or anything like that. Some sketches, a list of things I just wanted to keep tabs on because I had to keep in mind all of these things throughout the course of a semester. So it was nice to just be able to reference them all in one place. Oh, I remember this. It's so funny how flipping back through this brings back all these memories, because I remember I was on a student film set and I was, again, supposed to be keeping track of which takes were good, if we were recording sound for each take, et cetera, et cetera. And the director had printed out a sheet for me that I forgot. And she was so mad at me that I forgot it. But I was like, it's no big deal. I keep a pocket notebook on me all the time, so I could just record it down here. So I was, in that moment, very glad that I kept this with me to save my butt there. Some sketches to be able to orient some characters in a short film that we were shooting. I know this just looks like nonsense, but I still know what everything represents. I can decipher this still. Some more thumbnailing. This was a stamp from when my dorm took some people up to hike a mountain, and we were so woefully underprepared for the insanity that was this trek. It was 1,603 meters up. It is the tallest mountain in the Czech Republic. I think the peak is actually in Poland, so we kind of crossed the border there when we were climbing, but no one told us how much snow was going to be at the top of this mountain, and it was like an all-day hike. It took us like 8 hours to get from one side to the other, but I was really glad that I had my pocket notebook with me so I could get a stamp at the post office that was at the top of the mountain. This spread is more similar to how I use my pocket notebooks currently, where I don't necessarily write a bunch of to-dos or assignments because I am not in college anymore, but I wrote down just like something that makes me laugh is like when people are like, oh, have you read this book? Yeah, I have. Cool. Like, it's just so silly to me when you ask a question and it doesn't go anywhere. And then at the time, I think this was 2020. Yeah, this was right at the start of COVID. I was really into Animal Crossing New Horizons, and I was drawing comics every now and then of like different funny interactions. So I just wrote down some ideas for that. Some more to-dos and a packing list. And I think that is just about the end of this notebook. I don't have anything in the last couple pages. I'm not really planning on going back and filling them. And again, I loved using this pocket notebook because it was just so portable, and the hardcover meant that I could throw it in any bag and I knew that it wouldn't get completely crushed. Like, for example, I have props. This was a little fanny pack that I would take with me on sets because I usually worked with the camera, and so I needed some supplies to like clean camera lenses like with me. So this is like a you blow air out of this to get dust off of a camera lens, but this also fit nice and snugly in there, so if I needed to take notes on anything or draw out a floor plan for a scene that we were shooting, I could very easily do that. So that was the very first pocket notebook that I kept. And then I went a couple years without really using a pocket notebook, but recently, earlier this year, I picked up this A6 notebook from Sterling Ink that is just a grid notebook with page numbers. It is the 500 page variation. So on the front here, I just have a little key for the 4 different like main categories I've been using in this book. And this was something I actually implemented really recently. Before, I was just writing whatever, not caring if they fit into any category, but I found that everything I was writing down did kind of stick to a certain theme, if you want to call it that. So when I first got this notebook, I had intended to use it as more of a traditional commonplace book. So I started off with some quotes here. I did not attribute these quotes to anyone, which is unfortunate, but I was just writing down some things that I saw either on TikTok or on Pinterest, just quotes that grabbed me. Just wanted to write those down somewhere. This is a really long shopping list because I was redoing my whole living room, and so I just wanted to brain dump every single thing I could possibly think of that I would ever want or need for my home. So I've gotten through some of them, clearly not all of them, and that's good. I should not have bought all of these, but in this notebook, I like to cross things out when I've either bought them or completed them, and then I'll write the date next to it when I did end up buying something. I just find that that helps me be a little bit more aware of my spending habits and kind of keep an eye on if I'm spending too much too quickly. And then here is an example of something that I really like to use this notebook for, is just different lists. I love making a list about whatever, whenever. So this is a list of all the nicknames that I call my dog. There's a lot. Another thing that I really like to do a lot in this notebook is write down things that make me laugh. So I am a video editor for Twitch streamers, so I'll take their Twitch footage and cut it down into like a highlight video for their YouTube channel. So by extension, I watch a lot of Twitch. So if I'm watching a stream and something makes me laugh, I'll just write it down, because streams are not really something I go back and rewatch. So if it made me like laugh out loud in the moment, I like to write it down. Here I was gifted this really big 1,000-page notebook, and I was really excited to use it, but I was so scared that I was going to mess it up. So I was like, okay, I just need to like get it out of my brain how I'm going to use this notebook. So I listed a bunch of different ideas of what I could use the notebook for. I just journaled about how I felt weird about how I was using this notebook, because I was like, oh, it's not like a commonplace anymore. Spoiler alert, there are no rules. You could do whatever you want. So I just needed to journal it out to come to that realization that it's okay. It's not life or death. Here, I wrote down a list of different things that I might want to track in this very book. Here, I wrote down some thoughts I had while reading The Shining by Stephen King. A question that came up for me a lot when I was reading is like, at what point does intuition become paranoia? And I think there's a quote that's like, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, something like that. So that idea fascinates me. So I just wanted to jot down what I was thinking here. And then here is a list of every single notebook that I owned at the time. And I just wanted to keep track of like which ones were empty, what was in what. There's a lot of notebooks. It's fine. Everything's fine. Here is more of a traditional commonplacing type thing where I listened to a Mel Robbins podcast episode and just wrote down notes on what she was saying. This page here is I wanted to brain dump every single possible thing that I could think of that I had to do, which I told a couple of people that I did that. And they're like, wow, that would really stress me out to see all of that. And I was like, you know what? Honestly, I felt a lot better after I did it. It's like 2.5 pages full of stuff, but it's also nice to look back and be like, I knocked out a lot of those things like pretty quickly. There's still a few of these things that I haven't done. I still need to declutter photos on my phone, and that's not just like something I could do in a day. That's going to take a while, but it's nice to have a record of that here. This is a grocery list. And this is a good example of if I've tagged a page with red, that means it's an action item. So it's like something that I need to do. And if I'm done with the page, I'll just put a check mark and circle it to denote that I don't need to look at this page anymore. It is irrelevant moving forward. So same thing with this page where I was brainstorming username ideas and just needed to create some accounts. So I did all that. So this page got a check mark. Here I wrote down another Mel Robbins quote, and I was just brainstorming smaller goals because for some reason I was always under the impression that goals had to be like, write a book. Like they couldn't be anything smaller than that. So I was just practicing the idea of like having smaller, more achievable goals to set for myself instead of like these big, grand, long-term thing. Like some of these are just sign up for a library card, which is not going to take that long to do once I actually get out and do it. Some more goals. This was a list of video games, movies, TV, books, stuff like that. This is another brain dump where, again, I like to write the date of when I complete things if I can remember the date. It's just nice to be able to see, like, sometimes progress is made steadily over time and it's not always all or nothing. Here, I was just writing down some sticker shops. This page is thinking of different things that I could write down in a more traditional commonplace book, which I have a notebook for that, but I haven't actually started yet. So I just wanted to jot down some things, see if any of them speak to me when I actually go to use that commonplace book for the first time. This was another inbox brain dump, which at this point I am starting to move these into my Sterling Ink Common Planner because I have the space for it now. Like when I was in the Hobonichi Cousin, I didn't really have any blank pages to be able to put these big lists on, but in the Common Planner, I can do that whenever. So these brain dumps now are going to live in my Common Planner from here on out. But here I was just brainstorming the key I was going to use. So like the red, the green, the purple. I just wanted to see how things looked. There's this weird stain here. I have no idea what that is. Not a clue. And then the last thing that I wrote in here was I just wrote down a list of like video game lines that I could hear when I read them. If you know any of these, shout out. But yeah, that is the end of how I've been using this book currently. And I love just jotting down anything and everything in this little book. Anything that comes to mind, it's going in here because I have a lot of thoughts throughout the day. And then the very last pocket notebook that I use is this Sunny Light notebook. And I am in love with this thing. It is the perfect everyday carry little pocket notebook because it's got this cover. It's got an elastic band to keep it closed. It's got a pen loop already attached, and I believe the size is an A6 Slim, and it's got a pre-made index for you all ready to go, which if I have to set up an index, I'm never doing that myself. But if it's already there for me, then I'll use it. But this book I'm planning on using as a reference book that I will want to use when I'm like out and about. So if I'm at the grocery store, and let's go to August, I could see like, oh, okay, peaches are in season right now. Maybe I'll pick up a fresh peach, stuff like that. So this is very teeny tiny writing, but I can read it, so that's what's important. Here I noted down every day so far this year that I've had a migraine, so that when I go to my doctor this month, I can pull this out and be like, hey, it's not getting better. It's in fact getting worse. What are we going to do? So I just thought that would be nice to have all of this in one place, because I do track my migraines across multiple different places. So to just consolidate everything here to be able to show my doctor, I thought would be helpful. And then I have a couple pages marked off that I haven't written down yet, but I'm like, would it be helpful to have a sleep log? I don't really know, so I've left those blank for now. I want to write down all of the different like coffee terms, like cappuccino versus latte versus Americano. I want to write down all those here because I know some of them, but I don't know all of them. And then I also want to write down maybe my go-to orders for different coffee shops, because I don't go to coffee shops very often and I can get kind of overwhelmed if I'm like, I don't even remember what I like here. It's been like 6 months since I've been here. So it might be nice to just have a list of like, okay, when you go to this place, you like this coffee. When you go to this place, you like this matcha, that kind of thing. So I'm not very far into this book, but I'm obsessed with it. It is a Tomoe River paper, and I did do a pen test because I thought that this was going to be a bad batch of the Tomoe River paper, but I was very pleasantly surprised that there's really not a lot of bleed through. So very excited to get to use this notebook more. I think it's adorable. It fits in my bag perfectly because it's so tiny. And yeah, I'm obsessed. And then the last couple things that I want to show off here are not pocket notebooks, but it's just examples of things that you could put in a pocket notebook if you're looking for ideas. So this was a book that I carried around primarily as a sketchbook, but this page makes me laugh because I had wanted to do like an alignment chart for different kinds of naps. So I wrote that here. That's definitely something that you could do in a pocket notebook. That does not need to be done in this book. Here I was playing a Nancy Drew game. So spoilers for Nancy Drew and the Curse of Blackmore Manor. If you were planning on playing that, this is some puzzle solving, so for your eyes. But sometimes it's just easiest to write things down on paper when you're trying to solve puzzles. Like this was a deciphering mini game thing, and it was just easier to write it out than try and like screenshot or I don't even know what. So yeah, just another example of why I think carrying a notebook on you is super beneficial in ways that you can't predict, but it's nice to have the option. Another thing I wanted to note is I've had the most success with pocket notebooks when I just use them as catch-alls, and anything and everything of any subject can go in it, because this is an example of a pocket notebook that I tried to use that was only going to be for creative ideas and creative prompts. And this is just a Muji notebook. So I started off by writing down things that I heard people say, like somebody on the street said, and then my friend kissed him and got salmonella for 3 months, which I don't think that's possible. So, but either way, made me laugh. So I just wrote down things that I heard or saw that could serve as inspiration at some point. Here, I was just brainstorming story ideas, some more story ideas. And then you can see most of this notebook is completely blank. And that's because I personally don't do well when I try and compartmentalize things like that. Because if I have a creative thought and I'm not carrying this, then I would be like, okay, I have to wait until I get home and then I can write it down in this. And that's just not helpful. Or if I am only carrying this on me and I have an idea for a shopping list, I don't want to write that down in here because that's my creative thoughts journal. So I personally get the most benefit out of pocket notebooks when I have no rules on what's going in them. So yeah, closing thoughts are, I love pocket notebooks. I think everyone should have one. Inspiration strikes all the time. There's always something to write down. Like, did you see something funny on your drive to work today? And you would forget it if you didn't write it down. But either way, thank you so very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.